Hello and welcome back to Interjections, International Break Edition. I'm your host, Andrew. We're doing something a little different this week. We're going to get real nerdy with some financial information discussions. So we've got Mikko here, and Bernhard's back on the show. As you may remember, we met with him back, I want to say, in the early spring, and he gave us some great detail on what was going on with Zhang and the ownership situation. So Bernhard, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me back on again. Hello, guys. How are you doing?
Doing well. Mikko, what's up with you?
Yeah, doing well. International breaks, they are a bit slow always, so good to have something intro talk back again.
Yeah, the reality of following a club like Inter is that there's never a dull moment, whether it be on the pitch, off the pitch, in the transfer market. There's always something going on. So always plenty of content available. And the feedback from you, our listeners, has been you wanted to maybe understand what's going on with Oaktree a bit more. So we want to start there with you, Bernhard. So last time we spoke, we were talking about Zhang and whether or not he was going to default on his loan and lose ownership of the club. Fast forward to today, and of course that happened over the summer. Oaktree, this hedge fund, is now the owner of Inter. And I don't know if you'll agree with this. I'd say it hasn't impacted day-to-day operations too much, but it is a great unknown. People are curious, what does this mean long-term? How long are Oaktree going to hold the club for? So I want to get your thoughts there. What do you think Oaktree's end game is here? If you were to guess, like, how long are they going to be owners of Inter for?
Okay, to get into this, I would roll back a little bit and try to explain in simple words what Oaktree really is. So for people out there, it is important to understand that they are investors. They're not like guys in other clubs who just want to pump in money and have success. They basically just want to earn money. So that's you have got to notice. And Oaktree itself, they are managing about, let's say it's about 200 billion euros or dollars. Doesn't really matter that much anymore. So it's like a 5% difference. So just, if I'm talking about euros, you can just add a little bit and you have the sum in dollars. But they manage about 200 billion in euros, and they know what they do. They are one of the biggest distracted debt funds and alternative investment managers on this planet. And you need to know that they have been bought like 5 years ago from Brookfield Asset Managers, a Canadian investment company, which is even bigger. And they, in fact, are the biggest or the second biggest on the world, together with Blackstone. So we have some real behemoth behind us with all this knowledge and investment expertise. But that's what they do. What they do is they make money for their customers, for their clients. You trust them to make them like 10 to 15 or maybe 20% a year. And that's what they try to do. That's why they are in this business of risky assets. That's why they lent money to Zhang, because they knew there was more money in there than in a normal investment. They don't do these normal investments that everybody knows, like normal mainstream stocks or normal mainstream bonds. They do distressed debt, they do alternative and private equity. So they do something different here. And that's what they do with Inter as well. But they do it for money-making reasons. And obviously you can't do it within like a year or 2 years that you double or triple your investments in the football world nowadays. But they got Inter on a cheap. And what they have to do is they have a contract where they still have to pay out something. Let's put it this way in easy words, to Zhang if they sell on Inter on a really high profit, because they get more or less what Zhang owed them, but the difference for anything that is much higher is kind of shared between them. So it wasn't like too bad for Zhang to get them in if they still are able to improve our business and make Inter worth more money. And that's what they are trying to do. Currently, I would say it hasn't impacted Inter too much. I would say it wasn't a much different transfer strategy as we have seen under Zhang, for example. It was pretty much the same. Maybe they put in a little bit the brakes to slow down a little bit, to not spend too much money. They definitely wanted to get to know the club first and to know let's say, the finance a little bit better. And what is now developing in the news, or you can read it already in Italian media, is that they want to lower the amount of money they spend on players, especially on the salary side. So they're paying high wages. It is the highest wage cost we have in the league, with some 140, 150 million euros for the first team only. You have to add the second team, you have to add the Primavera, the female team, the coaching staff, and you have to add some bonuses as well. And in this year, we will be paying over 230 million euros in salaries, wages, bonuses, social security, severance, indemnity, image rights, and all this stuff together. So this will be the highest of the league. More or less, like it's 100% safe to say that right now. But you also have to add amortization cost to this total personnel cost you have with your players. And there we have other clubs who have higher amortization costs, because if you buy a player like for 5 years for, let's say, 50 million, you have to amortize it on the whole contract, and you typically have it with a linear amortization, and it costs you like 10 million euros for every single of these 5 years. So
Yeah, so Bernhard, if I could just interject there for a second. So amortization's a real killer from a profit and loss perspective when you make bad transfers. So when you have a player like
yes,
Joaquin Correa, not only are you paying him large amounts of wages per season, but you're also amortizing him. You're taking the amount of transfer fee you paid
yes,
for him, you're dividing it by the length of his contract, and every year that amount's hitting our income statement. And it's a very large amounts that we're not receiving any return on because he's such an unproductive player. So when you make big purchases and they don't work out, it really creates problems in the future on the income statement.
that's absolutely true. And this is exactly where we will have, and we will see a change in the transfer policy coming next July, because that's exactly what you said, which is the big risk in the transfer market strategy we had so far, and which many times didn't pay off. Let's think of Arnautovic, let's think of Gabriel Barbosa, let's think of João Mario, and of course, you mentioned maybe the worst flop in our recent transfer history, Correa. He actually cost us about, I'm not sure about it, like 8 or 9 million in amortization every year. Even if he was on loan, he cost us the same sum of amortization. He cost us some, 10, 11, 12 million euros of wages, all included with taxes and so on. So it is a huge amount of money. And we will happily be getting rid of him in coming summer. Same maybe with Arnautovic and some other older players. And we will happily be investing this money in younger players. And what you mentioned is that we will see, I really assume we will see that, like I take it for certain, they will invest more money in younger players with lower wages and salaries and maybe even bonuses, but much more amortization. You see, if you buy a 23, 24-year-old player who can play in your starting 11, he will cost you money. If it's the starting 11 we have right now. To find a younger player getting in there will set you back at least 50 million of a transfer fee. And so you have to amortize that. But in a total cost basis, looking forward like 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you can still make some profit on that. But this is only possible, of course, if you are willing to sell those players on. But let's look at Marcus Thuram. He was contracted with like it is about 6 million net in salaries, which makes it like 8 million because of the decreto crescita in gross wages. And the amortization isn't really there because we got him on a signing bonus of like 8 million for him and his agents. So you basically have nothing to amortize. So if you sell him on today for 10 million, it's basically pure profit. If you sell him for 50 million, it's pure profit, more or less. Take a couple of millions away maybe. But that's about it. And this will be the transfer strategy of Inter in the coming years, as long as Oaktree are in charge, of course.
Well, okay, I want to talk about this for a minute because I guess I'm a little concerned about the future transfer policy of the club because I completely agree we do not want to waste money on transfers like the Correas and Arnautovic's and the Barbosas of the world. Completely agree. But it's a bit of a fine line you're trying to walk because, on one hand, like you said, if you want to buy an impactful player who's 23, 24 years old, even if they're not a guaranteed starter, like someone like Fertesi, those prices are usually high. It's a $30 million transfer. So if we're moving away from a policy of spending money, big money transfers on players, that really leads you two avenues. You can pursue free transfers, or like the Thurams of the world, or you can pursue these lower cost players like Bisek and Palacios, who are very inexperienced at the top level but have low cost bases. So if they don't work out, there's relatively financial loss. I guess my concern is, can you, when you have as many aging players as we do who need to be replaced, it's not really realistic to replace them all with like low cost transfers like Palacios and Bisek. So do you think Oaktree is going to enable Marotta and Osilio to go out and sign, 27 to 30-year-old free transfers like we used to with, Thuram, or I'm blanking on other names at the top of my mind, but these free transfers who can provide an immediate impact? Because the example Jay and I keep talking about for this past summer was Mario Hermoso, who ended up going to Roma ultimately, and this is this was a prime aged center back on elevated wages, but not absurdly high wages, who Oaktree said no, sign a younger player. So when you think about like what the future transfer strategy of the club is going to be, do you think Oaktree is going to permit these free signings still, or do you think they're going to force us to basically only signing Bisek type players?
Basically, you've got a good point there, absolutely. And basically, I think they actually enforce us much more to sign younger players and maybe even spend more money because we have the revenue to do that. And it is okay as long as the wages aren't too high. But as you said, if the wages are like okay for us to pay them and the player isn't costing more than 30 million euros, we will not be as lucky as with Fratesi that he's able to start for us. And even with Fratesi, he's not really the starter for us. He's like the first player from the bench, but not the starter right now. He will maybe next year. But this is exactly the problem. If you have a player as good as Fratesi, do you want to keep him on the bench? You have to play him. And this is going to be the strategy for Oaktree. And I think we will see a little bit more trading on players. For example, if you really look at our wage structure and if you see like Lautaro Martinez right now, he's costing us like 17 million euros gross just on the wages. And if he's having a good year with a lot of bonuses, and if we win this Scudetto again, it might even be 20 million. And I wouldn't be surprised if any good offer would come up. Let's say 100 million north in the summer. I wouldn't be surprised that we see Lautaro Martinez leaving, because I mean right now he doesn't really have the best season so far. I hope he's getting up to his old form and fitness and will show his worth, and we won't be able. We definitely don't need to sell him, but I wouldn't be surprised that if a chance comes up, that any good player could be sold. I don't think we need to do it, and we definitely don't need it for our financial situation in this year. We don't need to, but if you have a chance, why not? Like, let's just think about what we did with Lukaku. That was a real insane amount of money, and in hindsight, I think we're all happy that we sold him.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And I guess maybe before I pass this over to Mikko, so if I were to, close this loop, go back to my initial question. So Oaktree, we know now, they're in this exclusively to earn a return. They have no emotional attachment to the club. They're viewing this as a business. So if you put yourself in their shoes and you want to maximize your capital gain on Inter, what do you think the exit strategy looks like for them? Do you think this is a wait a couple of years and hold? Do you think this is a try and get a new stadium built and then sell? Like, what do you think the ultimate exit strategy is here for Oaktree?
Yeah, you just mentioned it. It's the stadium. I don't think it has to be finished to get the maximum profit out of a sale, but it has to be they have to be started to build it. They have to get all those bureaucracy done. And we know it for like, I don't know, more than 10 years right now. What we see in Milan is just incredible. But they, if they are really getting it done, so if they, for example, what the plan is right now, if you have read, I'm sure about that, is maybe to buy the San Siro together with Milan and to buy the surrounding area, which will cost every single club around 130 million euros. So the San Siro Stadium, the parking areas around it, and so on, to build a new stadium in the next couple of years. So if you get that done until the end of the year, you already have something making this club worth more money. And if you have all the permissions to really start building, and if the first guy starts digging, there for the new stadium besides the old one, then you really can start calculating a new value for this club. And to get there, of course, they have to maximize the marketing income from merchandising and then from sponsoring deals. And that's what they do already since a couple of years really well. They are really exploring all the possibilities they have. And we will see, like in this season, we will see, what was the number I was calculating from sponsorships? It should be just shy of 100 million this year. We might be seeing commercial income from royalties, which is like basically the Nike deal and what we get because we are having some extra rights to sell all this stuff. This is another 24 million last year, will maybe be 25, 26 million this year, or maybe even more with the Club World Cup in America. So, they're doing their job, and we will be up there at around 500 million euros of revenue this season. And this is a potential that any investor who really wants to have a football club is trying to look at, because they show that we can, as a club, create more revenue year by year and grow and grow and grow. And this is important for a new investor. So if they have a exit strategy, I don't expect it to happen this year, in 25, not in 24, of course, but even not in 25, and maybe not in 26. But I would look forward to 27, because this is the time when we also have to pay the old bond, which we have like this 450 million bond outstanding. It's just like 390 right now because we already paid back a little bit. But then we have to refinance the whole stuff. Maybe they do it even before that, but to get some exit strategy done, you could really, wait for the club to have anything finished for the stadium, not really built finished, but they have all the permissions and start building, and then you will maximize the profit on this club, I guess.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting to see when the exit really happens. But you mentioned your projections, and I wanna get your comments on last year's financial results. How did they look to you, and do you have something special to point out from the last year's result?
Well, yeah. We had our last year's result really made official like a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not sure how familiar you were with my predictions before that. I was predicting something a little bit better. I was predicting a loss in the middle of the 20 million euros, and they came out with 36 million loss. And I was wondering, where was my mistake? Where was my errors in this calculation, in my prediction? And I was really working through the whole balance sheet of the club, and I was finding some interesting stuff, actually. So just for example, this summer we sent Salcedo, Van Huysten on loans, and other players as well. And what we did already last year with like the 30th of June 2024, we already impaired those players. So there's like, for example, in this loss, there's already included the 6 million loss we actually take this season. So we will not have those losses again. There are some other provisions for potential penalties and for some stuff that we will not be seeing again. So we will have like less costs in this year from this stuff coming up. And what I did not calculate correctly was the amount of the Scudetto bonus. So the bonuses that we paid to our players was in the region of like 25 to 30 million euros, the bonuses alone, for all the achievements during the season, which is like huge. So our players and staff and coaching staff, they have some nice bonuses in their contracts. And this is basically the most important numbers where I've been a little bit off with my predictions. But looking for this season now, I'm actually predicting that we will be in a positive area, that we will make a little bit of a profit, like 5-6 million, something like that.
You mean that we're going to make profit this season?
Yes. I mean, I always do it with some different scenarios, so.
Yeah, I was thinking, are you calculating these interest payments? Which
yes,
I think,
of course.
All right. Well, that would be quite an achievement, I think, to get break even at this point.
Yeah. For the people out there not familiar with our finances, actually we are more or less profitable on an operating basis. This means before payment of taxes and interests and financial charges and stuff like that. But a huge chunk of our spending was because of the interests of our loans and of our ownership loans we had from the Thang era. So we pay about, it was like shy of 30 million for interests only on the bonds that we owe. And there was like 8, 9 or 10 million euros for the holding structure of Steven Sang. But all those payments we had to our owners, they have already been paid back, except for a small part to Tsang already. And then there was just a little bit left now for Oaktree to be paid back, and we did that in September. So we actually only have left the debt from the bond, and this is already reducing our cost of interest. So if we don't add new debt this season, we will be somewhere around 30 million of interest payments. So it costs us about 10 million less than last year. But still,
sorry, Bernhard, just to, while you were talking about our net operating profit, I was reading some information, and I find it a little unusual, or maybe you can shine some light on this for me. So we include player sales as part of our like operating income metrics. Not all clubs do this, is my understanding, and the reason is that player sales are unpredictable in nature. They're not reoccurring. Like if you think about a Lukaku, it's a one-off instance. So we're including player sales, and we had hefty player sales come through the income statement last year, if my understanding is correct. Like profitable, like positive to Inter player sales.
Yes.
We aren't, as far as I'm concerned, like when you're doing your projections, are you forecasting major sales? Are you anticipating us having to sell someone? You mentioned thuram earlier, or are you expecting us to get back to this like net income position with like primavera sales, like standard business activity?
Great point and great question. Yes, I am, but just smaller ones. I also want to get back to last year's numbers here. It was like 65 million, 0.8, around 66 million in player sales, in profits from player sales, it's like capital gains on player sales. And this was basically Onana and Brozovic. These were the two main chunks. The rest is just a little bit. And this season, we already have 16 million of already done plusvalenze or capital gains, which is from Agome, Oristanio, Zanotti, Di Gregorio, because we have a sell-on clause and we will get another 1.5 million by the end of the year. And I actually think that Esposito's contract with the buy option will be used, like it is 5 million, and then we would have something like a sell-on clause. So we will be having those players gone by the end of the season, and with those players making 16 million of capital gains, and this gets us to around 5 or 6 million in surplus. So that's already included. So there is no big player sale, but one important thing this season is the television revenues from the FIFA Club World Cup in 25. We don't know how much money this will bring in because these idiots haven't even sold the TV rights. They are not able to really sell those TV rights. And there are two uncertain things. First of all,
If the
because there
tournament
are
will even
some
happen, it's
games.
still kind of up in the air, right? Like this is
Yeah,
being
yeah,
litigated.
I don't doubt it. Yeah, it sounds a bit weird, but I don't doubt it will happen. It will be played. The thing is, how much money will the clubs make? Because there will be some Real Madrids and Barcelonas out there, or whoever, who really make some pressure on FIFA. So because the revenues are not close to what was promised.
Don't forget the
The
mighty Inter
promised
Miami.
revenues. Yeah, they already in there now. Yeah, losing everything and still in there. Well, it's a favor to Messi, of
yeah,
course.
they were the regular season winners, so of course they need to be there.
Yeah, yeah. But there's just one more team left, right? From Copa Libertadores, the finalists, the winners will be the last team, and then we are complete. Should be soon the final, shouldn't it? I don't know. Well, anyway, what I wanted to point out is I calculate 20 million of TV money revenues, not more, but not less, in this season. So until the end of June, we will get 20 million from this FIFA Club World Cup. That's what I assume. That's what in my calculations. And then another 10 million in the next season, because there's some games played before the 30th of June and some games are played afterwards. And if we are not really crashing out at the earliest possible point, we should be playing some games in July as well. So I guess it should be around 30 million, of which 20 million should be coming in by the end of this season. Could be wrong, but that's an estimate.
And where does that capture us going in the Champions League? Last year, we had a pretty good year financially, and we crashed out of the Champions League relatively early. This year, it seems like we're putting all our eggs in the Champions League basket. We're really trying to have a successful run in this competition. So where does your financial forecast have us going in that and the TV money associated with it?
Well, that's more the prediction of Marotta. He already included in last year's financial updates that the new Champions League format will lead to a revenue boost, because the revenue from the TV deal should be about a 30% increase. So we have one more home game for sure, because just one more, let alone in the league stage, and it doesn't look too bad from us right now. So we might add another game in the with a quarterfinal. So my prediction in this realistic scenario is that we get a Champions League quarterfinal knockout. We are not going to the semifinals, but we survive the first knockout game. So in the round of 16, we win, and in the quarterfinals, we get the hell out of there. And this would lead, just to get you some perspective, this would lead to television revenues, only television TV money, in the area of 90 to 92 million euros from the Champions League. This does not include the ticket sales, because these, of course, are massive in the Champions League as well, especially in a quarterfinal or a whatever, if we get even further with a good opponent.
And what about the prize money? There's for every win and every.
That's included in this. Sorry about that. That's included in this television revenue from UEFA competitions.
Okay, yeah, makes sense, because that was quite a large number anyway.
Yeah, it is. It's all the TV money. They calculate or print this in their balance sheet as television revenues from UEFA competitions. This includes, for example, if you have what your historic ranking is, that how many points you make. So if you make a win, if you make 3 points, it gets you 2.1 million, of course. Sorry, 2.1 million per game. If you draw, it's just like 700,000. If you lose, you get nothing for this specific game. If you go on to the round of 16, it is 11 million. If you go on to the quarterfinals, it's an additional 12.5 million, and so on. So this adds up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and then there's special prize money for the position in the final ranking in the league stage.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know that for sure right now, but it is around 275,000 euros should be the number per position. So if you are like the last, you only get 270,000 or something like that. If you're second last, it's double of that. And if you're like in the first position, it's like 32 times those 270,000.
Yeah, but anyway, pretty pretty big numbers and some kind of an improvement from last season for certain.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So if we get there, it should be from TV money and prize money from UEFA competitions. It would be 26 million more than last year, where we ended up with just shy of 66 million euros. But this is us being one round further.
I want to ask a question about the commercial revenues because so much of what football clubs do these days is not about competition revenues, but it's about the stuff they earn off the pitch from the brands and social media followers and being able to ink shirt sponsors and things like that. And we have not been very good at this as long as I've been a fan of this club. Obviously, we all remember I think it was Digital Bits fiasco a couple years ago where we didn't receive any money for our shirt sponsor, and we've never really attracted a wide array of these international conglomerates who wants to sponsor us the way a company like Milan has, Fly Emirates or whatever. So we've always struggled with
Mhm.
this. I've read some speculation online that like part of it might have been the Zhang's family's interactions with association with Inter, and basically, Americans or other countries with money would be reluctant to invest or work with a Chinese-owned company. And not trying to turn this political, but I'm just curious your thoughts. Like our commercial revenues jumped significantly last year, and Zhang was the owner of the club. So when you look at your forecast for next season and all that, like, do you think there's any merit to that argument? Do you think there's upside in Inter's commercial revenues with an ownership change, with just new perspective on operating the club?
Well, in part, but who got Paramount on the board? It still was Sang. So it was an American company going to sponsor us last year or like 1.5 years ago because we already had them for the Champions League final. Yes, there is a point, and especially right now, you have more financial solid companies sponsoring and putting money in merchant and advertising absolutely from America than China. Well, it's just the sheer amount of people in the Asian market is just so much bigger, and our fan base in China is so much bigger than it is in America, for example. So adding all this up and having a lots of people and in our fan base, especially in China, who spend a lot of money on our merchandise, I don't think we get a huge upgrade or revenue boost just because we are American or actually in the end Canadian owned right now. I don't expect that. But we have done our homework. Our CEO from the business standpoint, Antonello, has done a good job and made some good signings on the sponsorships. Just to like blow out some numbers here. Last year we made about 80 million from our sponsorings, which was like the kit deal, all the sponsors put together is like 80 million. And now we are already somewhere at 96, 97 million. And depending on how good the season goes, it could even be beyond 100 million. Not much more, but around there. And in addition to that, of course, there is the commercial income and royalties. So that's merchandise, licensing, and all this stuff, which is additional to the sponsorship deals. We had 24 million, which was a huge boost to last year. It was like we doubled it. But this was especially because we internalized all this merchandising and licensing back in 2019 from Nike. You all heard maybe that our Nike deal is not that good like a couple of years ago. We're not getting so much money from Nike, which is just like 21, 22 million of a fixed fee every year. But you have to add this commercial income from merchandising because other clubs typically don't do half that. They get paid for everything in one pot, and we do have the commercial income in addition to our Nike deal with all the Nike merchandise in our online shops and so on. And this really was a blowout win in the last 2 years because we really made much more money with the internalized merchandising and licensing in contrast to if Nike would have done this for us.
So to
So we do
clarify and just
good work.
put this in terms I can wrap my head around. So you'll often see graphics slashed online of like, oh, Milan earns so much more from their kit deal than Inter. But there's a disconnect there because we take a larger portion of our merchandise sales than Milan does. Is that right?
That's exactly right. They have a nice deal, but ours doesn't look as bad if you really know how our deal is structured. In addition to that, there's also a hint in our newest balance sheet update. It seems as if the fixed fee we get from Nike is rising every year a little bit. So we have to wait and see a little bit, but it keeps getting better.
Yeah, I understood that Milan's deal is like 30 million with Puma. And if we have like 22 million with Nike, plus then we add the American merchandising profit, which is maybe like, I don't know, 20 million if the whole sum
Yeah,
was 24, so you subtract
it's around
the
that.
cost, so maybe
Yeah.
20 million, 18 million, so that's like almost 40 million last season already with the Nike, so it's a pretty
Yeah,
good deal.
maybe a little less because it's also licensing. So, for example, Konami or something like that, which
Okay,
will
yeah.
have our exclusive rights. But a big chunk of it, of course. And I think if we really compare on a fair and square level how our main sponsorship deals from our kit sponsors look like, I think currently we are ahead of Milan. Yes.
So, based on your projections, what can we expect, or can we expect anything from the winter transfer window?
Well, I don't think we need something in the winter. If there is some positive surprise, let's say I've read some rumors that, for example, Torino wants to buy Korea. I don't believe it, but if something like this happens, we might even find ourselves in the position to get some new striker, another fourth or fifth striker in there. That could happen. But on the other hand, I just think it's more realistic that we get some extensions for Dumfries now. I mean, Bissek is official already. Dumfries will I already included in my predictions that we do extend Dumfries and pay him more money, for example. But we also might extend De Vrij and Darmian for another season. And then we have to see if we get early replacements for Acerbi, Arnautovic, Correa or something, because maybe they want to bring in some new guys, young guys, already half a year early before those other guys leave. But I don't think so, actually. I think we really wait for the summer and see what happens, how fit Acerbi is, if they still get him another year, or if they believe it's better for him to stop. He looks incredible recently after his injury, but I don't know if it's enough for the next season. But we will definitely not see Arnautovic in Korea as soon as the next season starts. So I think we have a big chunk of money because we talked earlier on how expensive those two players are in terms of salary and amortization. And if we get them out, we have some good money for younger players and at least one good one, which is not on the cheap. So I think we better wait for the summer.
So there was a report, and I think this is official, that Inter extended the contracts of Darmian, Mkhitaryan, and Acerbi for one additional season. I saw this in October. Mikko, do you remember seeing this report?
Yeah. I think it was. I think there were some options, and I don't know where they're like.
Yeah, like we exercised the options on them. So
yeah.
Actually, it was in the balance sheet. Actually, it was Darmian, Mkhitaryan, Acerbi, and so on. They already have a contract running for inclusive next season. But what I do think this is that they actually have contracts with options to get them out after the FIFA Club World Cup. So with those players not having a contract running longer than the end of June, they could not play for us in the Club World Cup in the early July games.
Yeah.
So I think it's more or less like, okay, you do it an extra year, and if we want you out, you get 500,000 euros and you're off. I think it's more or less a deal like that.
Okay,
Yeah,
that makes sense. Because I was going to say, if those reports are true, that would lead you to believe that De Vrij is the odd man out in the defense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely looks a little bit like that. Yeah, but they will figure out until the end of the season, because also De Vrij, he's not earning nothing. He came here with a nice salary, and he still earns a nice salary. I think it's 3.8 million net. So doubled it down or close to double it down to 7.5 for a gross salary, and you can find some decent young players earning much less.
So no business in winter window unless it's like someone goes and someone comes in. At least when it comes to the
Yeah.
salaries, I was just thinking there's these rumors of again about Chiesa coming to Inter on loan, but I
Yeah.
would believe that's not gonna happen unless like someone like Korea, as you mentioned, leaves in January.
Yeah,
But
I've seen those rumors too, but I think maybe if really someone tries to get Arnautovic or Correa in the winter, then I could imagine Chiesa as a third or maybe fourth striker. Yes, but actually I don't believe it. But it's possible, of course.
yeah, so you already explained a bit about the summer and what's possible there, but I just want to get your confirmation so that the fact is we don't necessarily need to sell anyone from our main squad next summer. Is that correct?
This season, and yes, this season and next summer is not really. There's no need to sell someone. In the next summer, okay, so we're in the season 25-26 now. If we
Yeah.
get some players out like we do every year, some young guns from our Primavera, and if we get to like 20 million of profits of capital gains, then we are close to a net zero or profit or loss around zero for the next season. Not this season, the next season.
All right.
This is my prediction. So there is no need to sell a big player, but of course, if there is a huge offer for a player like Lautaro, I mean, I would actually guess that most players are sellable if the offer is high enough. I think the only player which is not really on sale, even on a huge price, is maybe Di Marco right now, because what he means to the fans and what this club means to him, I think he does not want to leave. And the others are maybe more eager to leave. But for him, I think it's unrealistic to get to a number where this would happen.
So we're being relieved of two huge financial burdens this summer in that Correa gone, Arnautovic gone, and we're spending about, I want to say, between amortization and wages, it's absurd. It's like 20 million a year on these guys. So
Yeah, even more.
great, wonderful. So there are two ways of looking at this. One is, okay, we're freeing up all this money. We can go and get someone good. But then there's also okay, it's Oaktree. They're going to force us to be responsible. The name we're being linked to a ton. The guy who is on fire this season is Jonathan David. So I guess two-pronged question for you. One, is Jonathan David realistic? Two, if not, what is?
Yes, he is realistic. The question is, does he want to join us over other clubs? I think Jonathan David is someone where we can really have some nice contacts with his co-national Buchanan. So he might be talking pretty good about this. I hope so, at least. He should be available for a deal in the region of what we paid for thuram. There's like about a 6 million net salary and maybe some signing bonus of 8, 9, 10 million euros for him and his agent and so on. But that's nothing that we couldn't afford next year. This is less than Korea cost us right now. Much less.
But we need to remember there's no what's the tax benefit in this case.
Decreto crescita.
Yeah, so it's a bit more expensive for the club.
That's no problem. That's no problem because Korea still costs more. So if we get rid of Korea and get Jonathan David in for 7 million net plus a signing bonus of 10 million, he will be less expensive per year than Korea has been right now.
This conversation is doing a great job of firming up confirming that Joachim Correa is the worst transfer in the history of Inter. My God.
Well, he started off so good with his, I think it was a brace. He scored 2 goals in his first game for Inter.
Yeah, that's right.
And then it was just downhill. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think he's a bad player, but he's not been a good fit for us.
Yeah.
I think he's a bad player.
But
you don't get called up to the Argentinian national team for a couple of games if you're a bad player. But he has really been bad for us. Sorry, but it was that way. Yeah.
You have to admit, though, and I don't want to turn this into the Joachim Correa podcast, like between his struggles and maybe the fitness of him missing the World Cup, like he is a shell of his former self. Like his ability appears to be all but gone. Okay, Mikko, is there anything else you wanted to talk about strictly on the financial side of things?
So I have this one specific question. When you talk about, for example, De Ryan, he has a nice contract and like a certain level of gross salary and the cost for the club with the salary. If we replace him with a cheaper player, but then we need to buy this player, so we need to pay the transfer fee, and there will be like a amortization cost. Are there some differences between in the balance sheet wise, the amortization costs and the salaries? Like, what difference does it make?
Well, there's not really big difference. It's just basically a cost factor. There is some important thing in there that you are not allowed to have more than 70% of your revenues paid in salaries or in player costs as this salaries and bonuses and so on. And we are well below that. We're well below 60% of our revenues. But this is something that you have to keep in mind. There is no real restriction on that in terms of amortization, but this is also kind of a UEFA hint where they want to get you to be less restrictive on paying money for young players and giving money to other clubs, because that's what you do. If you buy someone and amortize it, at least another club has money. But they don't want you to pay too much money for players, because if you on wages, of course, because if you pay that money on wages, the money is gone. It is out of the system. So this is also a way to keep the whole ecosystem kind of in balance. Because if you buy 50 million or 100 million worth of players, at least another club can have it. If you play it on wages, like look at Real Madrid, they have Mbappe on a free. But I don't know how much money they pay him. Actually, it's not that much as he earned before, but it's still a lot of money. But this money is out of the system. And it's not good if the players are earning too much money. So I think actually some kind of a salary cap, as we see in many US sports, wouldn't be too bad of an idea. And it would make all the competitions a little bit more competitive. Because there's some clubs like Real Madrid and Barcelona, of course, close to a 1 billion revenue each year now, and they run away with a cost and especially a revenue leadership compared to other clubs, and no one else is able to compete on those revenue levels right now.
Okay,
but it's not really a difference.
Yeah, so that kind of makes sense. Not a lot of difference between those two, but in terms of Oaktree's point of view, it's more like getting the cheaper salary players so they can be sold later. Yeah, younger players so they can be sold later. That's more of a logic there. All right.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a logic, and it depends a little bit on the club. For example, most clubs like us do have a linear amortization and depreciation. So we amortize the same amount for every contract year. Napoli, for example, that's the thing's a little bit different. They have not a linear amortization. So, but if a player gets a contract in Napoli, the amortization in the first year is like, I think it is 40%. The second year is 30%. Then it's 20%, and then like 5 or something like that. For us, it's like on a 5-year contract, it's 20% of the transfer fee every single year. So that's maybe a little bit of a difference for some clubs, but not for us.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize that like this amortization stuff we're talking about, like it's not real in a certain sense. Like this is not a cash outflow. The cash outflow is the actual transfer fee you pay for this player. The annual amortization affects net income every year, and that's why it matters for our income statement. But like this is not a real expense we're incurring each season on a cash basis. So it's a weird accounting nuance. It's a little counterintuitive if you're not as familiar with finance, but it just, once again, it goes to show why you need to make good transfer decisions or else you're going to be saddled with a problem for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. It is a big it is a big point. And actually many of the transfer fees aren't paid like in a lump sum in the summer when you buy it. Most of those transfers are paid in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 installments in 2 or 3 years. So that's a typical way things work. So it's not too far away from the amortization. So the cash flow is closer to the amortization than being paid a lump sum in one point of time, actually. So it's kind of in the middle, closer to amortization, but it's not like as you said.
All right. Well, I think we've exhausted you with all our financial questions. It's fun being a fan of of a football club where you need a degree in finance just to understand what's going on, it feels like. But no, Bernhard, really appreciate you providing some perspective on what we can expect this winter, this summer, and how maybe the future is a little bit peachier than it has been in past times for Inter. It seems like we're kind of on firm financial footing for the first time in a while.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think it's as dark as many try to portray it. I'm pretty optimistic on all that stuff. So I'm happy to talk to you again in a couple of months, maybe when we know about a little more about our finances.
Yeah, we'll definitely try to get you on again in the summer as we can talk about the year that was, what we can expect in the summer mercato and things of that nature. But yeah, thanks again, Bernhard, for joining us. Can you float your Twitter handle again for people who are interested in checking out your work?
Oh yeah, of course. Thanks. It's at Sirphi, SIRPHI.
All right. Well, that's all for this week. We'll be back next week with some actual matches to talk about. So we will catch you all then. Mikko, take us away.
Forza Inter.
All right. See you guys.